All right, we've got two breaking stories on this Friday night. One is the shooting at Emory University's Atlanta campus. The shooter is now dead. We will have an update on that situation in moments. But the second piece of breaking news is something the world has been anticipating for days now. President Trump just announced that he and Vladimir Putin will meet face-to-face in Alaska next Friday. President Trump posting on social media the highly anticipated meeting between myself as President of the United States of America and President Vladimir Putin of Russia will take place next Friday, August 15th, 2025, in the great state of Alaska. Further details will follow. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, this will be the first time in a decade that Putin has been on American soil, and that news comes on the very same day that Trump's deadline expired for Russia to agree to end the war in Ukraine. The planned punishment for missing that deadline was to be harsh economic sanctions. Instead, we have this announcement of this upcoming meeting. But the U.S. has already slapped Russia's trading partner, India, with 50% tariffs for buying Russian oil. When it comes to ending the war, the president offered some insight about a possible peace deal restoring Ukraine to its pre-war borders. Now seems increasingly unlikely.
You're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories.
NewsNation's Kelly Myers live for us at the White House. Kelly, I think everybody's a little bit surprised to hear this was going to happen in Alaska.
Yeah, and we were in that room not too long ago when the president was teasing this possible announcement. He said he was going to tell us a short time from now, and he said to me that we would be very happy with the location choice. Now we know it's on U.S. territory in Alaska, but you can't emphasize enough how significant this moment is and the roller coaster ride it took to get here. You know, President Trump wanted to end this on day one. This has been something that he just hasn't been able to bring to an end. And at first he was frustrated, we talked about, with Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, and recently he's been really frustrated at Russian President Vladimir Putin. And now we're hearing that the two are going to meet face-to-face a week from today. The president even saying today in the state dining room when we were in there that he wanted this to happen even sooner, but because of the security arrangements, you can imagine what those might look like, it has to happen a week from now, which is even pretty quick. We were just talking with the White House official what city this might take place in, but we don't know that yet. So there's still a lot we don't know at this hour, Elizabeth. We don't know where it's happening exactly, what the security is going to look like, and what Ukrainian President Zelensky has to say about all of this, because Trump in the state dining room earlier said that he's meeting with Putin first. So I wanted to play what I had to ask him there in the state dining room, and we could talk on the other side.
Have you spoken to Russian President Putin yet? And would you go to Russia or Ukraine? And what exactly would you say to him?
We'll be announcing the location in maybe a little while, and I think you'll be very happy. We'll see what happens, right? All we can do is do our best. We've been working on this one for a long time. This is a very complicated one also. This was extremely complicated, but we made it less complicated, and we had two very brilliant people on my right and my left. They understood what was at stake. I think if it didn't get done now, it might have never gotten done. So this is the same, very similar with Ukraine. It became more and more complicated as time went on. It was simple at the beginning. Was it going to happen? But it became more and more complicated. But I think we're getting close.
So there he said to me, all we can do is do our best. So even leaving room open that this might not be the end or the final answer. He even said to a reporter in there, Elizabeth, that he doesn't like to use the word last chance, seeming to say that this may not be Putin's last chance here. And we also don't know exactly what he's going to say to Putin to get him to bring this to an end. And that's what I was trying to get at there. And in the room there, Elizabeth, was Witkoff, Steve Witkoff, who was the one that sat across from Putin in these negotiations. We also tried to ask him what those conversations looked like. You can only imagine, but he wouldn't weigh in without the approval of the White House press secretary, he said. Elizabeth.
Yeah, there are reports emerging that Steve Witkoff was presented with a plan from President Putin that he would keep all of Donbass, which is a big chunk of Ukraine there, something the Ukrainian president has not been happy with. So a lot of details. But listen, Kelly, President Putin wanted to meet in Moscow. He wanted to host this meeting. So the fact that President Trump will host it on American territory is pretty significant, yes?
Absolutely. And I even asked there, would he ever consider going to Russia, going to Ukraine? And then he replied back that we would be happy with the answer, that it's in Alaska. I think it caught a lot of people here at the White House by surprise. Many people were trying to guess somewhere in Europe. But this will definitely be interesting to see exactly where they do this, what it looks like, and just can't emphasize enough the significance of this moment, the two meeting together. And as you mentioned, the first time in just shy of 10 years since 2015 that Putin will be here. Just a huge moment and a critical moment to see if this really does bring the war in Ukraine to an end. Elizabeth.
Well, let's hope. All right, Kelly Meyer, thanks so much, live from the White House. Now back to that other breaking news. Police say a shooter is dead at Emory University in Georgia and that there is no longer a threat to the community. The school reported shortly after 5 p.m. East Coast time that a shooter, an active shooter, was near the CVS store on campus. The headquarters for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is right next door. Students were warned in this alert to run, hide, and fight. Police say an officer was injured while responding to the shooter. It's unclear whether he was shot, and there's a lot more we don't know, including who this gunman was, what kind of gun he used, and why he targeted this school and this location. Let's bring in former Secret Service agent Michael Matranga now. Michael, thanks so much for being here. You train people in these active shooter drills. That alert that went out to the entire campus of run, hide, and fight is pretty alarming.
It is. One of the things that over the last, 30 minutes, I've been trying to catch up on information that I've pulled away that seems to have worked was that early notification that there was an incident alarming the people within that vicinity to run, hide, or fight. And so I think that the call to send that out immediately quite possibly have saved some lives.
Do we think that there's any significance? I mean, I know this is very early on. Police have yet to brief anybody on this at this point. But the fact that the CDC was right next door to the CVS drugstore where the shooting took place?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've been kind of playing through my head is what's the motive here? And, I know we're all focused on Emory University, but, was it just by happenstance that across the street was the CDC? Was the CDC the true target? Or was this just a crime that occurred at the CVS? We really don't know yet. So, it could be, one of three of those situations where it was a crime that happened across the street. It could be a targeted or it could be, targeted towards Emory University. So I think we're just going to have to wait a little while and see how this plays out.
And still not clear if the gunman is dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound or he was shot by police. This is what we're about a week, 10 days from these universities opening back up for the fall semester. I'm guessing it's a good thing, at least for the university, because they're still at this moment on this night in that summer school session. Not a lot of people on campus.
Right, which kind of leads me to believe that this might be, most of the time they're pretty hastily planned, but this one seems to have been either, a target of Emory University, that there wasn't a whole lot of planning involved because, usually these individuals who take the time to plan these attacks want to get the maximum impact. It does not appear that that's the case. So, like I said, it's still early. It's preliminary. We don't know the motives. We don't even know who the shooter is yet to see what was going on in his or her life cause them to seek this type of violence within their community. So
right.
I think we're just going to have to wait and see and realize that this is the society that we're living in, that security in our communities is something that is absolutely going to have to take precedent. But more importantly than that is, and instead of talking about response and how we can get better there, let's talk about, why these individuals are wanting to carry out these attacks in the first place.
Prevention.
Yep.
Michael Matranga, thanks. We're very relieved to be able to report that the situation is now under control and that the danger seems to be eliminated at this hour. Really appreciate you coming on and joining us with this late breaking news.
Thank you. I'll be happy when we don't have to meet like this anymore.
I know. You've been on the show too many times talking about stories like this. All right, we're going to shift gears now to the war on drugs because it may soon become a bona fide military operation and not just a job for law enforcement. That's according to the New York Times, which reports tonight that President Trump is now ordering the Pentagon to go after certain Latin American drug cartels. Cartels like Tren de Aragua, MS-13, and the Venezuelan cartel of the Suns, all of which the administration deemed global terrorist organizations back in January after the inauguration. Now, this new directive would reportedly put U.S. troops on the front lines combating groups responsible for smuggling much of the fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamines that plague our streets and fill our morgues. Our very busy Kelly Meyer asked President Trump about reports about this effort at the White House this afternoon.
Talking about sending military forces to fight against the drug cartels in Latin America, do you think it's worth sending our forces, our U.S. forces there to take this on?
Latin America's got a lot of cartels. They've got a lot of drugs flowing. So, we want to protect our country. We have to protect our country. We haven't been doing it for 4 years. And we love this country like they love their countries. We have to protect our country. So, we're playing a tough game, but we'll have more to say about that soon. Yes, ma'am.
The administration is also doubling down on efforts tonight to get Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro out of power and into custody. The U.S. accuses him of being one of the largest drug traffickers in the world. He's allegedly at the helm of that global terrorist group, the Cartel of the Suns. He's also widely believed to have blatantly stolen the last Venezuelan election. Maduro has been wanted in this country since his 2020 indictment on drug charges. Well, now U.S. authorities are doubling the reward for Maduro's arrest to a staggering $50 million. It is the largest bounty the U.S. has ever put on a sitting foreign leader. For more on all this, we're joined now by NewsNation senior security consultant, Lieutenant General Richard Newton, and Chris Clem. He's the retired Yuma Sector Border Chief. Gentlemen, great to have you here. So, General Newton, this is the most aggressive step yet, bringing the military into the fight against these ruthless drug cartels. Do we know how this would work? Because the Mexican president said today it's not happening inside Mexico.
Well, it certainly is under this administration, Elizabeth. There is some precedence back in the 80s under Reagan administration. In fact, I oversaw Air Force 4 military sales to Colombia to provide them military capabilities to fight the Colombian drug cartels with C-130 aircraft and A-37 attack aircraft, and also to provide special operations forces. But they were there to train the Colombian forces. This is a different activity, and it would be one that certainly would potentially draw in U.S. military forces. I'm thinking special operations. I'm thinking increased enhanced intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. But that said, we have a problem in this United States of America because of the increased use of fentanyl drugs that are crossing the border at ever-increasing rates. And certainly the other aspect of this is these are all China-enabled, China-backed with certain chemicals that they're providing. So it's a huge problem. Final point is, the president, is duly authorized to protect the American people. And that's, I believe, what he's trying to do here.
Chris, Trump has already sent the National Guard to the border, which is the southern border is now virtually sealed shut to illegal immigrants. What could more troops do along the border? And how do you fight these Mexican drug cartels from U.S. soil?
Well, good evening, Elizabeth. And, it's as the Lieutenant General just mentioned, this is long-standing precedent working with Department of Defense. And you're right, National Guard's down there, and our border, our southern border, is more secure than it's ever been in my 30 years down here. So what will happen is this is going against cartels. This isn't like street gangs and local thugs. These cartels are well outfitted with military-style equipment, so we need to fight fire with fire. So they're going to be in places, remote areas where we know the cartel operates in support of Border Patrol agents and other immigration enforcement agencies out there. So they'll be complementing and supplementing the normal routine operations. But again, when you bring in the entire, U.S. government and their allies to target, we're going to have some good specific information. And like the Lieutenant General said, special operations will be involved. Maybe the Mexican president doesn't want us on her soil, and that's fine. But you know what? We're going to work together. We're going to fight this. There's no mistake here that Maduro took office, and then we had gangs like Tren de Aragua, cartels, and organizations like Tren de Aragua, become active, and we've seen what they can do. So this is a great thing to do.
I'll get to Maduro in a second, but Chris, to be clear, because as you point out, these cartels are well armed with American-made weapons. These cartels are brutal. They are murderous. They're operating in the United States on American territory?
Well, we know that. We know that there are cartel operations inside, all 50 states and around the world. What we're going to be doing here, and what I suspect they're going to, without getting too much into tradecraft, is they're going to be working with state, local, and other federal agencies in these areas on special operations, but more importantly, to really secure the border in some of these remote areas while the infrastructure and the resources from this big, beautiful bill start coming to fruition.
General, President Bush back in 1989 sent 20,000 troops into Panama to arrest Manuel Noriega, who was wanted at the time for drug trafficking. The UN condemned the move. Was that operation into Panama considered a success?
I was working with the Deputy Chief of Staff of Operations in 1989 when that operation went down, and it was clearly, I believe, in line with U.S. national security interests to take him down and, frankly, to bring him to justice. Regardless of what the UN thinks or doesn't think at that point, this was certainly in U.S. national security interests. And I clearly remember, I was just a young major on the air staff at the time, but the Joint Chiefs of Staff deliberated extensively. They briefed President George H.W. Bush and gave him the options for him to go out and find, fix, and target Noriega and bring him to justice. And that's exactly what they did. And I think it was within the interests of the United States.
So there is precedent for the President of the United States to send the U.S. military uninvited into a South American country.
If it is to protect the U.S. national security interests and the American people, fast forward to just a couple days or so ago, or most recently, our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, also, since the Trump administration has came on board in January of this year, has also designated these drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And just like Chris said, these are dangerous, bad people. These aren't gangs. These are, I believe that they present themselves as threats to the United States and threats to American people.
Chris, I want to talk about this $50 million bounty now on President Maduro. It's extraordinary. Do you think a sum that big will shake anything loose, that somebody will flip and turn him in or give U.S. authorities the information they need to arrest him?
Well, I think that's exactly the point, right? That kind of dollar figure will shake things loose.
It's staggering. It's staggering.
Yeah, people will start peeling back layers and asking some questions and realizing, if they're going to put that kind of bounty on his head, what chips could fall if I don't do something? So, I think it's going to do exactly that. We're going to see some action come out of this. It's about securing America and keeping our allies and our American people and the public, safe. And so if he's a threat, especially when you look at the influence China has in South America and with Maduro, we've got to get that guy under control. And this is going to be certainly going to raise some eyebrows and hopefully get us the results we're looking for.
All right. General Richard Newton, Chris Clem, thank you both so much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. To New York now, where the Justice Department has opened an investigation into the state's top prosecutor, Attorney General Letitia James. DOJ prosecutors have issued 2 subpoenas this week. They want information on civil cases that James brought against the NRA and the Trump Organization back in 2022. You might remember James successfully sued Trump and his company over claims they fraudulently misrepresented their wealth and their financial statements. They were found guilty by a jury of doing so. Trump is now appealing that judgment. In a statement today, James's attorney said in part, quote, weaponizing the Department of Justice to try to punish an elected official for doing her job is an attack on the rule of law and a dangerous escalation by this administration. Coming up, Israel is going into Gaza, all of it, including the capital of Gaza City, despite intense resistance at home and abroad. What does this mean for the Palestinians? And most importantly, what does this mean also for the hostages? We'll discuss. And then later, one of President Biden's coronavirus advisors goes full Maha. But will RFK Jr. accept the challenge he's proposing when it comes to regulating ultra-processed food? Or is it a step too far? All right, if there's renewed hope for a possible peace in Ukraine, given the announcement in the last hour from President Trump that he's meeting with Putin in Alaska next Friday, that's certainly not the case in Gaza after Israel's security cabinet approved a plan to take over the rest of Gaza, including Gaza City. The plan would see Israel expand military operations in the enclave. It's not clear when or how this will happen. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it's not a full occupation, it's a liberation. But in Israel and around the world, the plan has not been met with praise, but with sharp criticism. Crowds in Tel Aviv lit flares. Some clashed with police, and hostage families chained themselves outside the prime minister's office in Jerusalem, all in protest. Some Israelis fear the plan will put the hostages still held in Gaza in even more danger and put Israeli soldiers at risk. Hamas described the plan as, quote, full-fledged war crimes, and that will come at a high cost. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he is, quote, gravely concerned about the impact the decision will have on Palestinians in Gaza. And Germany announced it will pause shipping military equipment that can be used in Gaza to Israel. Germany is a key Israeli ally and the second biggest supplier of arms to Israel. Netanyahu called that decision, quote, disappointing. Joining us now is Aaron David Miller, former State Department negotiator and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So, Aaron, the Israeli military thinks this is a bad idea. The Israeli public is protesting. One British military analyst who was just in Gaza called the idea of taking over Gaza, quote, madness. What do you think?
First of all, thanks for having me. Look, we're nearing the second. We're going to mark the second anniversary. Anniversary is probably not the right word, of Hamas's October 7 attack, the willful and indiscriminate murder of men, women, and children, the sexual predation, the mutilation, and the taking and the executing of hostages. And then the Israeli response, which has resulted in an exponential number of Palestinian deaths and a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. The original goals of this were to redeem the hostages. 252 were taken, and to ensure that Hamas would never, ever again be in a position to launch another October 7. What's occurred over the course of the last year and a half under the most right-wing government in the history of the State of Israel is a degree of mission creep, which sadly is attached largely and driven by the prime minister's political requirements and needs. And as a consequence, we're now on the cusp of an operation that I don't think is going to result in the freedom for hostages, except if this leads to a negotiation, which is possibly one of the prime minister's objectives.
Right, it could be. I don't know. The Israeli cabinet met for an insane number of hours until the early last night and into the early morning hours before taking a vote on this. The IDF has been very vocal in saying they don't think this is a good idea. The reservists, the soldiers are exhausted. Some are refusing to serve. They're so exhausted. But the point is that you're right. The mission always was defeat Hamas so that it cannot launch another attack and free the hostages. The hostages are still not free. There's 50 that are still being held, 20 of whom are alive. Hamas, according to the IDF, has been so degraded, it won't be able to launch another attack. But it's dangerous still to move into central Gaza because Hamas still has access to hundreds of miles of tunnels. There's still a lot of damage they can do defending themselves in Gaza.
Yeah, the Israelis face an insurgency. Hamas has morphed from a military organization capable of pulling off this extraordinary attack into an insurgency. Since May, 50 Israeli soldiers have been killed, either in ambushes or IEDs. You have a tunnel structure that you referred to, which is half as long as the New York subway system, and most of it is not destroyed. So again, mission creep is an understatement here. Prime Minister has talked about total victory.
Yeah.
Total victory. And now he's talking about taking over the entire Gaza Strip. Israelis don't have the manpower to do that, which is why you saw the initial operation will be against Gaza City. So again, I sadly, I'm not an Israeli, and despite my critics, I don't play one on television. But the reality is this Israeli prime minister, the longest governing prime minister in the history of the State of Israel, the most gifted politician and the most politically ruthless politician in Israel, basically has prized and prioritized avenging the dead over redeeming the living.
Yeah.
And Israelis can deal with Hamas, get the hostages, the 20 that remain, out, and alleviate the misery that has been caused as a consequence of what you see play out now throughout Gaza. Malnutrition, starvation, call it what you want, food insecurity. More Palestinians are dying now because they don't have access to potable water, sanitation, and adequate medical care. So end the war.
Well, I think at this point you've got opposition politicians in Israel begging President Trump to intervene, because in the world right now, it is only President Trump who's seen as being remotely capable of being able to influence Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We shall see. Aaron David Miller, sobering analysis tonight. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. Love NewsNation.
Thank you. Coming up for us, police are about to hold a news conference about that shooting at Emory University. We'll bring that to you live when it happens. Plus, the man once known for taking on big tobacco now wants to take on an even bigger target, big food, as in ultra-processed food. We'll talk to him in a moment. And the fast-growing wildfires are back in California. One of them already covers 100,000 acres. Thousands of people have been evacuated. We'll have the latest. The wildfires are back in California, this time fueled not only by gusty winds, but by extreme heat. There are two primary fires right now that first responders are focused on. One is the Canyon Fire, just north of Los Angeles. The other is the Gifford Fire, which is burning in Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo counties. That Gifford Fire has exploded to 100,000 acres, making it the state's largest fire this year. Hundreds of structures are threatened, and some towns have already been evacuated. The Canyon Fire is closer to the millions of people living nearby in Los Angeles. It's fast becoming a mega fire. Nearly 13,000 people have been warned that they may need to leave at a moment's notice. We will be monitoring throughout the show and, of course, in the days to come. All right, could the food industry meet the same fate as the cigarette companies? Well, one man certainly hopes so, and he's in a position to make it happen. Dr. David Kessler headed the FDA under Presidents George H.W. Bush and President Bill Clinton when he took on big tobacco. Now he's aligning with HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his fight against big food. It's a curious alliance since Kessler was the architect of President Biden's massive COVID vaccine response. Kessler is filing a formal civilian petition with the FDA. He wants the agency to declare processed refined carbohydrates, the core ingredients of all that ultra-processed food, as no longer generally recognized as safe. That's the formal designation, which Kessler says has, for nearly half a century, allowed these food companies to effectively set their own rules to determine what's safe and what isn't. Kessler is specifically targeting refined sweeteners, flours, and starches. He argues those additives are linked to ever-increasing rates of obesity, diabetes, heart and kidney disease, and cancer. The urgency is clear here. Just this week, the CDC reported that ultra-processed foods make up more than half of the American diet, including the majority of the food that kids eat. Joining us now is Dr. David Kessler, former FDA commissioner and author of Diet, Drugs, and Dopamine. Dr. Kessler, welcome back to the show. So, are ultra-processed foods as big a threat to public health as big tobacco was?
Well, they are certainly the primary culprit behind, much of chronic disease. 25% of us in our lifetime are going to develop heart failure, 30 to 40% diabetes, 25% are going to have, a stroke. And at the core of those diseases, is our diet. 4 5 decades ago, the FDA allowed these substances. Just go through the list. Just you pick up a food package and you look at the ingredient label, and you see terms like maltodextrin, xylose,
What is that
maltose.
stuff?
What is that stuff? And the FDA allowed them to be classified as grass. Normally, anything that gets added to food requires a showing of reasonable certainty of no harm. It had to be a food additive. But these were allowed to be, on the market through this loophole called grass. And today, there is no expert consensus. Certainly, if you look at the American body over the last 4 decades, and you look at the fact that only 12.2% of us are metabolically healthy, you see very easily the damage that's being done.
Do we need regulations, or because RFK Jr. has managed to bribe or convince or pressure, but food companies are voluntarily removing food dyes from foods. Do we need regulation with these ultra-processed foods, or is just pressure enough?
Well, I think we need to really rethink how we make foods in this country. I mean, and the fact is, if the companies are going to use this...
Dr. Kessler, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Super quick. If you'll stand by for 1 second, we're going to go to this press conference about this shooting at Emory University. Let's listen into the mayor talking.
I saw officers coming from all over to be able to respond to this incident. At this time, Chief Sherburne will give you more of the details, but at this time, the shooter is deceased, and we don't have any civilians that have been shot in this active shooter incident. Thank God for that. We do have a DeKalb County officer that was also shot. And at this very moment, the CEO of DeKalb County, Lorraine Cochran Johnson, as well as the police chief of DeKalb County, are at the hospital right now meeting and talking with individuals, the families, and other officers that were involved having to respond to this emergency situation. They will shortly come to this very same spot to give a press conference and an update on that officer and that incident. And at this time also, on the CDC's campus, there are 92 children that are in a daycare that is on this campus. They are safe, and we are setting up with the CDC and all connected parties to be able to get those families reunited with those children at a local school very nearby. And we have the address of that. That Chief will give you the specific address and name of that school nearby. So we are working to unify families. And at this time, there have been no civilian casualties, but this was an active shooter incident. The shooter is now deceased. The campus is, there are no threats on the campus currently, but we still have an active investigation. Atlanta Police Department will be the investigating party. And so we ask that while things are safe, that you don't drive in that part of campus, because we need to make sure that the investigation goes through without any obstruction. Again, to the men and women that work at the CDC, we know that you've had a tough go of it in the past year, and my heart goes out to you as uncertainty was around your occupation and you being citizens of Atlanta. That means something to me. And then today, this occurs. We are with you, we stand with you, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we bring resolve to this situation. And FBI SAC Brown, he may be able to tell you more about some of the windows that might have been shot on various floors of the CDC as gunfire did take place. The other thing is, to those parents of those 92 children that are at the CDC, I'm a parent as well. I know your uncertainty and your fear and your concern has been high. We wanted to come give you this message that all the children are safe, and that we will be making sure that you get reunited with them as soon as possible. I know your heart is just really, really aching, but the good news is none of them have been injured, and we will get you connected to those, to your loved ones really soon. I'll come back to this microphone after others will be given a chance to speak. Now I turn it over to Chief Darren Sherburne, as Atlanta Police Department has been in coordination with all the other outstanding agencies as we've been working together. And this is why we train on active shooter drills, et cetera, around this region. This has been a group project and a coordinated effort. And Darren Sherburne, the Atlanta Police Chief, will now address you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Chief.
Just give you an update and some additional information what the mayor provided. So this afternoon at approximately 4:50, The Atlanta 911 Center became aware of a report of an active shooter that was occurring at 1600 Clifton Road. This is right at the intersection of Clifton Road and CDC Parkway, immediately in front of the CDC campus. Officers from multiple agencies responded, from the campus, across the region, from our federal partners and our state partners responded to the scene. Officers arriving found a critically injured DeKalb County police officer that was down. He was immediately extracted from the scene and taken to Grady Memorial Hospital. Officers could still hear gunfire occurring inside the CVS drugstore that is right there at the intersections. Officers moved quickly to attempt to find the shooter and to neutralize the threat to the community. We later found the shooter on the second floor of the CVS. He had been struck by gunfire. We do not know at this time whether that was from officers or if it was self-inflicted. He was removed from the location by Atlanta Fire Rescue to render aid. He did pass at the scene. We also know that the CDC campus did receive multiple rounds into their buildings. Right now, as the mayor stated, we are not aware of any injury that occurred to anyone on that location. 4 other individuals did later arrive at the hospital. They were retreated for stress and anxiety symptoms. They were not injured in the shooting. And to reemphasize what the mayor stated, the children in the daycare center are unharmed. We have law enforcement and medical professionals with them, and we are coordinating the return of those children to their families. We've already put this out. We want to reemphasize it. The CDC leadership is communicating this to all parents, but the reunification site is at the Clifton School, which is located at 1900 Starvine Way, Starvin Way in Decatur. And we want to again reassure all parents and loved ones that their children are okay. We do believe there was a single shooter, and we do believe that single shooter is deceased. Right now, the investigation is being conducted by the Atlanta Police Department's Complex Case Squad, by the GBI and the FBI in a joint investigation until we know more information as to what transpired. The Atlanta Police Department is lifting up the DeKalb County officer, the DeKalb County Police Department in our prayers, and I ask everyone that is watching this broadcast to do the exact same thing. And I want to commend the men and women of law enforcement from all across this region that when this community needed them, no one shirked from the danger. And every officer from multiple jurisdictions responded and immediately moved to end this threat. Thank you. You want to say anything?
Sure. Hi, I'm Paul Brown, the Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Atlanta Division. And like the chief and the mayor said, we immediately responded to the scene. At this time, we're not aware of any casualties on the campus of the CDC, but in conjunction with our partners, we're methodically clearing that to ensure that that is accurate and that is remains so. And then once that's done, we'll assist with processing the scene and conducting the investigation jointly with our partners.
Mayor, Chief, we'll get ready for questions. We'll start on this side. We may not be able to get to everyone, but we'll start with you, Rob, over to the mayor's right.
Right.
Good evening, Mayor. Is it believed right now that the CDC was targeted in this attack?
Well, I'll let Chief Sherbaum ask anything around the investigation. He'll be able to answer that. But right now, it's so preliminary. I read social media and I get calls from a number of you that have heard things about this individual's background. He's a white male, and he has a, he is a known person that may have right now with any confidence until the investigation is fully conducted. But I think that in a short order, you'll know more about this individual and about some assumptions of his motives, but can't say right now.
All right. Can you tell us anything more about the suspect? What kind of weapon did he use? How many rounds went into the CDC building?
Chief, you want to?
Not yet. We can tell you multiple rounds were fired. We can tell you that multiple rounds were fired, both we believe at law enforcement and potentially at the CDC. Purposely, we can't say it definitively, but it would appear is that CVS a two-story store, or was he in some other kind of place above the store? We believe it's a multiple-story building.
Does he have a criminal record?
We can't release that at this time.
Did the man live in that building?
Allow me to let someone else ask a question. Anyone over here at New York Times?
So this shooting comes on the heels of a few other high-profile shootings, including one in Stewart, including numerous on Ed Jordan and some other neighborhoods. I'm curious to what extent can the city confront what seems to be a rash of gun violence without state-level intervention?
So your question around a number of high-profile shootings, Fort Stewart, here at Emory, and others across the nation and in the state of Georgia, is definitely one that we have to pay attention to. Mass shootings, active shooter scenarios should not become the norm. We have a number of individuals in this country that have access to high-powered weapons. And for individuals with those high-powered weapons that may have mental challenges, or those individuals with high-powered weapons that are angry, when they choose to use those weapons in a way that harms multiple people, we have to put an end to that in our society. So this is something we do have to have a national and a state, a full conversation across the nation and across the state of Georgia, not just in one city. As you see, this is a coordinated effort across DeKalb, across college campuses, the FBI, the GBI. As you see active shooters across the nation, we've just been added to the statistic.
Right here in black shirt.
Thank you. We're hearing that the officer passed away. You say he was critically injured. Did he pass away? Or is his condition?
Well, at this time, it is a DeKalb County officer, and we want to make sure that DeKalb County is able to respond to what's going on with that officer. We know that he was shot and critically injured, and at this time, as I stand here, I can't give you that information that you just asked. We have the PIO of DeKalb County here, and as I said, in short order, you will hear from the DeKalb County Chief and the DeKalb County CEO.
All right, over here.
Can I ask, why was the DeKalb officer there? I know this area is kind of on that border, but just talk about that, maybe Chief Shearbon, or you, Mr. Mayor.
I want to talk about how mutual aid and how we're all kind of together.
This is an area that is part of the city limits, but inside of DeKalb County, so it's not uncommon for patrol patterns to cross for multiple jurisdictions that may share the space. We don't know why the officer was there. Was he going to work? Was he coming home from work? We don't know if he was on patrol. We will know that at the end of the investigation.
Do you want to give an update?
So we can confirm that our officer was responding to the threat of the active shooter. Yes. Yes, we can confirm that our officer was responding to the threat of the active shooter.
Can you give an update on the condition? There have been several media reports that he's passed away, or she.
So we can't confirm that at this time. Like Mayor said previously, our chief, interim chief Pedrick, will be here to provide an update. I just don't have that information readily available.
Ryan.
So we both chief and mayor, if you can, we're getting reports that maybe the suspect who was known had some issues with the CDC because he was upset about COVID vaccine and he thought it made him sick. Is there any way you guys can maybe address that, and maybe if he was targeting the CDC because of the vaccine?
We cannot confirm at this time. This is in the earliest stages of the investigation. The same questions you have, law enforcement has. And so everything that is the question of the nation, we're going to get the answer to, and we'll be able to report back as soon as we can.
All right, Univision.
We're hearing this maybe from cab, but was this officer a rookie officer? We heard basically he was almost ambushed a little bit when he actually arrived on scene.
So any information about the officer will come from interim chief Pedrick later this evening, including his status and how long he was with the department.
All right.
Is the white car with the trunk open and shot up, is that connected to the suspect?
It's part of the crime scene at this time. We can't confirm if it was the car that the suspect drove, but it is being searched by the police and it's being held as evidence.
We're going to take the last question right here.
Do you guys have a timeline of when the gunfire was called in, how quickly officers responded, and how quickly the suspect was essentially...
4:50 p.m. is when the first call came in. Law enforcement arrived very, very quickly thereafter. Oftentimes when officers arrive, they're so quickly engaged in the scene they can't radio out. So we'll be reviewing all video to determine when the first officers arrived. But the response was from multiple agencies. I wish I could name everyone right now, but the citizens of the Atlanta region should be proud of their law enforcement today.
Mayor, you want to give a parting statement before we go?
Yeah, as Chief stated, this was a coordinated effort. When I was here around 5 15 or so, I was seeing not only DeKalb County and Atlanta, we were seeing Gwinnett County. We saw officers from Dunwoody.
All right, we've been listening into a news conference with the mayor of Atlanta, the police chief from Atlanta. We have the special agent in charge from the FBI, somebody from the DeKalb County law enforcement sheriff's department as well, giving us the update. Here's what we know about this shooting that happened 10 minutes to 5 East Coast time. Apparently, a white male armed with a gun went into a CVS drugstore, but his target apparently was, in fact, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control. He fired several shots into the CDC, into the windows. Inside the CDC at the time were many workers, as well as a daycare center for the children of CDC workers. 92 children were inside the daycare center at that time when the shooting broke out. Both the mayor and the police chief went to great lengths to reassure parents of those 92 children that all the children are fine. Everybody is fine. They will soon be reunited with their parents. You can only imagine the incredible stress and chaos for the parents and families of those 92 kids who have yet to be reunited with their families after this frightening lockdown after an active shooter. We also know the shooter did at some point shoot one of the law enforcement officers. Many of them responded once that alert went out at 10 to 5. One of those officers responding was an officer from the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department. He was shot and critically wounded by the gunman. He was taken to the hospital. We heard several questions. There are apparently some reports coming back from that hospital about whether or not that officer may have succumbed to his injuries. The spokesperson at the time said the chief of the DeKalb County Sheriff's Department was at the emergency room with the injured officer. She didn't know for sure if he was still alive or if doctors had not managed to save him. The shooter himself, described only at this point as a white male, is dead of a gunshot wound. The chief and the mayor do not know if that gunshot wound was self-inflicted or came from the robust law enforcement response once the active shooting 911 calls went out. No civilian casualties have been reported. However, the mayor did say they are still going through, the police chief emphasized they are still going through the building of the CDC, doing a whole sweep of it to make sure they haven't missed anyone or missed any victims. I want to bring back in Secret Service agent Michael Matrenga, who does a lot of, we said at the top of the show, a lot of training in these active shooter drills. We heard a couple questions in that news conference. It's all unconfirmed, of course, about the gunman's motive having to do somehow with a COVID vaccine, which was why he might have been shooting toward the CDC. Again, that's unconfirmed, but it's out there right now floating around, and there were two questions on it. It does, you and I talked about this at the top of the show. The fact that the CDC was right there immediately raised a lot of questions.
It did, and I think that, with the limited information that we had, we kind of had it figured out to 3 different scenarios. Either it's a random act of violence, a target of the CDC, or Emory University, and it looks like, we were right on the second. And so, what I'll say is that political divisiveness in this country. I mean, if this guy was targeting the CDC, there's a reason why. I don't know. I'm curious to see what his political affiliations were or his ideologies were or what motivated him to target the CDC. It appears that maybe it was COVID related. But political divisiveness in this country has become one of the greatest threats. And it's because of the political nature of our country and the citizens that we're going to continue to see these random acts of violence that are motivated by politics and by misinformation or whatever it was that motivated this guy to take this action against the CDC. It's unfortunate.
Sorry, somebody's yelling in here. I was particularly struck by the mayor and the police chief talking about those 92 children who were being, taken care of in a daycare center. I can't even fathom the panic from these parents who are still, at this hour, as we speak, have not yet been reunited with their children who were inside the CDC when the shooting happened.
Yeah, having kids myself, I mean, that was always one of the biggest concerns that I had. And, actually, being the director of security for a school district and having 9,200 kids that I was responsible for, that's always a concern. As I've said before, that, we as Americans, we have no more boundaries anymore. It used to be schools and government institutions and churches and things like that were off limits to violence, but this is the world that we live in. And so, praise God that there's no students that were injured, no children at that daycare, and it appears that the only person that lost their life was the one that had negative intentions. And so, maybe that's a win for
we hope not. We're still hearing. Apparently, one officer was very seriously, if not critically, hopefully not fatally wounded. We're still waiting for word on his status. Michael Matranga, thanks for jumping in on this breaking news tonight. We really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right, Chris Cuomo was joining me now. He'll pick up all of our coverage. This is like, he was just saying exactly what you've been talking about, Chris. Political division leading to extremism, leading to people committing acts of violence.
Yeah, this is how we are now. And look, the point that Matranga makes that we have to keep in mind is that there are, you can't make everything a hard target, Elizabeth. You can't. I mean, this started back in Columbine with schools, and people went crazy at the idea of having an armed security presence in a school because that's not what kids need to feel safe. I think it's exactly what they need to feel safe, but you can't do that everywhere.
Right.
And we have to embrace, I don't know if the CNN reporting is going to hold up, this speculation that this guy believed he was vaccine injured, and that's why he targeted the CDC at Emory. But if it is, it's just more of an extension of this, and there is more being done about vaccine injuries and research and long COVID and all that. But there are a lot of angry people, rightly or wrongly, and this is how we behave right now.
Yeah.
And it's almost impossible to stop.
It was interesting. They were asked directly about whether or not that was the motive here in the shooting, and the police and the mayor made it clear it's too soon now to talk about that. But we're seeing these reports not just on CNN, but they're of course catching fire on social media, where 80% of what's on social media is complete junk. But you know, sometimes there's 20% that's true. Who knows what's true? But if I don't think it would surprise anybody given the heightened emotions.
The commodity is the take.
Right.
See, it doesn't make sense to us because we were raised differently, not just as people, but as pros, where I don't really have a take. I got to see what it is, and then once it is, I'll tell you where it fits.
Right.
Now, all social media is the hot take. Mm-hmm. Who to blame, what to weaponize, how to advance an agenda, how to make people think that, you are a hub for what they want to feel.
Right.
And that's why everything gets weaponized. But I appreciate your coverage. You checked all the boxes. I will continue it now. Have a good weekend.
You too. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.